When a proud socialite throws dirty, muddy water on a beggar and drives off laughing, she has no idea she just insulted her billionaire fiancé's mother, disguised and watching. But the real twist comes when another woman, a kind-hearted salesgirl, steps in with compassion, hiding a powerful secret of her own. As hearts connect and truths unravel, only one woman will earn her place beside a man born of legacy and love. What if true royalty wears humility, not diamonds? Can humility outshine beauty? And what happens when envy turns deadly? Sit back and find out, because in a world of secrets, only the truth can crown the real queen. It was a gloomy, rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that comes slowly but doesn't seem to stop. The air was cold and the busy market road was full of puddles, mud, and noise. People rushed to cover their goods with nylon. Umbrellas danced in every direction. Feet shuffled through brown water. By the roadside, under a half-broken umbrella, sat an old woman named Madame Gladys. She wore a faded wrapper and an old scarf tied neatly around her head. Her slippers were wet, her hands folded on her lap as she waited for the rain to ease. She didn't complain. She just sat there quietly, watching people move, her tired eyes calm and steady. She looked like any other poor, forgotten woman, someone you could pass without a second glance. But there was something in her eyes, calm, watchful, like someone who had seen the world and was still trying to understand it. Then, suddenly, a black SUV came from nowhere. It didn't slow down. It didn't care about the mud or the people nearby. Its tires splashed through a large puddle, sending a strong wave of dirty water straight toward Madame Gladys. The old woman gasped as the cold, muddy water hit her face and body. Her wrapper was soaked. Mud covered her arms, her legs, even her hair. She didn't move at first, she just blinked, stunned. The car stopped just a few steps away. Slowly, the tinted window rolled down. From inside, a young woman in heavy makeup, large earrings, and designer glasses leaned out. Her voice was sharp and proud. "Why are you sitting there like it's your village? Poor people like you should stay out of the way. Next time, don't sit by the road like you're in your village," she said with a smirk. "Dirty things belong in dirty places." And with that, the window went up. The car drove off. People around the market stopped. Some stared in shock. Others shook their heads. One woman shouted after the car, "So you can't even say sorry?" Another man muttered, "What kind of human being is this?" Madame Gladys didn't respond. She slowly raised her hand to wipe her face, her fingers trembling. She looked down at her wet clothes, at the dirt on her hands. Then she whispered to herself, "Just a sorry." That's all she needed to say. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through the crowd. "Mama, let me help you." A young woman dressed in a simple supermarket apron bent down beside Madame Gladys. She had kind eyes, and her voice was calm and warm. She opened a small bag, pulled out a handkerchief and a bottle of water, and gently wiped the mud from the old woman's face. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," she said softly. Then she gave Madame Gladys the water, helped her adjust her scarf, and even held her hand to steady her as she sat up straighter. The old woman looked at her for a long moment, her lips shaking, not from cold, but from something else, something deeper. "Thank you, my daughter," Madame Gladys said quietly. "Thank you," the young woman smiled. "It's nothing, Mama. No one deserves to be treated like that." As the rain slowed to a drizzle, the crowd slowly moved on. Madame Gladys sat still on the low stool, the last bits of rain dripping from the edge of the market roof above her. Her wrapper clung to her skin, damp and heavy, but her heart was full, not with shame, but with something warmer. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. The young woman beside her, the one who had helped wipe her muddy face, was now holding her arm gently, making sure she was okay. "Thank you, my daughter," Madame Gladys said again, her voice low but steady. The girl smiled, soft and sincere. "You don't talk to elders like that," she replied. "That woman was wrong, completely wrong." Madame Gladys looked at her closely. There was no makeup on the girl's face. Her apron was a little stained from work. She wore simple flat shoes, and her hair was tied neatly at the back, but her eyes were full of light. "What's your name, dear?" the old woman asked. "Emily," she said cheerfully. "I work just down the road, at Green Basket Supermarket." She pointed across the street. "I usually help customers with groceries." Madame Gladys nodded slowly. You're kind, Emily. You have a good heart. Emily looked at the older woman's soaked blouse. The mud had left a large, dark stain across the chest and sleeves. Mama, she said gently, would you let me buy you a clean blouse? There's a small shop behind our store. Nothing fancy, but I can get something dry for you to change into. Madame Gladys's eyes widened, touched by the offer. She quickly shook her head. Ah, no, my daughter. Don't worry yourself. You've already done more than enough. I'll be fine. But Emily wasn't done. She reached into her pocket and brought out a few folded Naira notes. Take this, she said, just for a taxi home. Please. Madame Gladys looked at the money, her hand frozen midair. I can't take that, no. Please keep it. But Emily gently placed the money in her hand, closing the old woman's fingers around it. Mama, let me do this for you. And if you're ever around this side again, she pointed again at the supermarket, please come in and see me. I'm always there. You're not alone, Mama. Okay? Madame Gladys blinked back sudden tears. She wanted to say more, but her throat was tight with emotion. She nodded slowly. See you again, Mama, Emily said with a smile, before rushing back across the road, splashing lightly through the puddles. Madame Gladys watched her go. The way she waved at a passing customer, the way she smiled at someone helping to carry a basket, and her heart grew soft and heavy at the same time. She looked down at the now crumpled money in her hand. It wasn't the money that moved her. It was the heart behind it. She looked up at the sky, gray but clearing, and whispered quietly to herself, if only I could have a daughter-in-law like that. I would be very grateful to God. She stood still for a moment, her eyes fixed on the supermarket where Emily had disappeared. A part of her heart felt strangely full. She slowly turned to leave, still clutching the small money Emily had insisted she take. As she walked away from the market road, still soaked but no longer sad, a black SUV turned the corner, cutting through the wet street like a shark through water. Inside the car, the same woman who had splashed her earlier, Bianca, was leaning back in her seat, now dry, warm, and glowing. A few hours later, Bianca was reclining in a white robe at Bliss Signature Spa, one of the most expensive places in the city. The air smelled of lavender and vanilla. Soft piano music played in the background. Around her, rich women laughed, gossiped, and sipped fruit-infused water. Bianca held her phone high, searching for her best angle. Click. She typed her caption quickly before posting, "Only the strong shine, boss queen energy." Within minutes, the likes started pouring in. "Slay queen. Teach them how it's done. Peasants could never." Bianca smiled and tossed her phone onto the table beside her. 2 years ago, this life was only a dream. She had once hawked groundnuts on the street, wore the same slippers until the soles thinned. She had grown up in a one-room apartment with 5 siblings and a leaking roof. But things changed the day she modeled a bold Ankara dress at a small fashion event. A famous designer reposted her picture and her followers exploded overnight. Now she was a full-blown influencer, known for her luxury lifestyle, confidence, and unapologetic posts. Brands paid her well. People followed her every move. She had a driver, a stylist, and an assistant. Life was good, but deep inside, Bianca still heard the voice of poverty. She remembered hunger, shame. People looked down on her. And she swore to herself every single day, I know the taste of poverty and I'll never go back. That's why she hated seeing poor people. To her, they were reminders of where she came from, a place she wanted to erase. Not just escape, but bury completely. She picked up her phone again and posted a new selfie, her nose slightly raised. Put peasants in their place. She laughed quietly. Across from her, her friend Cynthia looked up from her magazine. You're glowing today, B. What's the secret? Bianca leaned back and smiled. Derek. Cynthia's eyebrows rose. Wait, Derek Okoye? Tech billionaire Derek? Bianca nodded proudly, swirling her drink. Yes, and he's going to propose soon. Wow, Cynthia breathed. You're lucky, girl. So many women want him. Bianca laughed lightly. Of course they do, but he chose me. I'm the full package, beauty, brains, and brand. Cynthia smiled. Well, don't lose him. Bianca's eyes gleamed. I won't. He knows I'm his level. She leaned back again, the robe falling neatly off her shoulder. But what she didn't know was the careless act at the muddy roadside. It hadn't been forgotten. Some people saw, and some people remember. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Inside a quiet corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Derek Okoye was sitting behind his desk, reading through project reports. He wasn't a man of many words. His voice was calm, his mind sharp, and his presence powerful, not because he shouted, but because he didn't need to. The room shifted when he entered. People listened when he spoke, yet for all his success, he hated noise, he hated show-off. That's what made him different. As the CEO of Okoye Innovations, a fast-growing tech company known for groundbreaking apps and digital solutions, Derek was one of the most talked-about bachelors in the country. Still, he didn't care much for the spotlight. His heart was quiet, and often lonely. There was a knock on the glass door. His assistant stepped in. "Sir, your 4 o'clock meeting has been moved to tomorrow." "All right," he said, barely lifting his eyes. "And your girlfriend called again. Bianca. She asked if you've confirmed dinner at the Ivy Lounge." Derek looked up for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. "Tell her I'll be there." The assistant nodded and left. Derek sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. Bianca, beautiful, confident, loud. Every time she walked into a room, heads turned. On paper, she was everything a man like him should want. A public figure, stylish, ambitious. They had met at a gala almost a year ago, where she was hosting and he had been a guest of honor. She had approached him boldly, with a glass of champagne and her signature line, "The most powerful man in the room deserves the most powerful woman." At first he had been curious. She was different from the women he'd met before, so sure of herself, so full of energy. It was refreshing, for a while. But as time passed, he began to notice things. She cared too much about appearance, about control, about class. She treated waiters like they were invisible. She spoke as though wealth made people more important than others. And though he hadn't said it aloud, a small voice inside him whispered, "This isn't what love is supposed to feel like." Still, he stayed. Maybe because it was easier than starting over. Maybe because everyone expected him to be with someone like her. He stood up and walked to the window. The sky outside was still cloudy from the afternoon rain. Somewhere far away, water was still dripping from market roofs. The evening breeze rolled gently through the quiet neighborhood as a yellow taxi pulled up in front of a large black gate. The compound behind it was massive, tall fences, neat hedges, a security post by the side. It was the kind of house that made passers-by stop and stare. The taxi door opened slowly, and Madame Gladys stepped out, holding a nylon bag with her wet blouse inside. Her wrapper was still slightly damp from the rain, but she walked with quiet dignity. The two guards at the gate sprang up the moment they saw her. Mama, you took taxi again?" the younger one asked nervously. "But Olga said you shouldn't be doing that again." "Oh," the older guard shook his head, clearly shaken. "Mama, at least call your driver next time. You scared us." Madame Gladys smiled calmly. "I just needed some fresh air. That's all." Just then, a black car drove in through the side gate, and a man in uniform stepped out, her personal driver. "Madam, you went out again without telling me," he said, rushing over to open the smaller gate for her. That was the moment it became clear. Madame Gladys wasn't just anybody. She was the mother of Derek Okoye, the billionaire tech mogul. This quiet woman in simple clothes who had just been insulted and splashed by Bianca earlier that day, lived in a mansion with staff, security, and a fleet of cars. But she preferred silence to show, simplicity to status, respect to riches. She walked through the open gate slowly, nodding to the guards as they bowed slightly. Inside, the mansion was peaceful. Wide hallways, polished floors, and family photos hanging gently on the walls. She placed her wrapper out to dry near the kitchen window, humming softly to herself. Her blouse was still damp, but her heart was full of the memory of a young girl with kind eyes and gentle hands. Emily, the name repeated in her mind like a quiet song. She sat down slowly in her favorite chair and rested her hands on her lap. The house was quiet, but not in a lonely way. It was the kind of quiet that helped her think. She looked up at a faded photo of her late husband, framed neatly above the old bookshelf. "Papa Derek," she said softly, "our boy has become a man. He has everything now, except a good woman by his side." A sigh escaped her lips. Derek had always been strong, wise beyond his years, but she knew strength could still feel lonely. His father had died over 10 years ago, and though Derek never said it out loud, the silence in the house had changed him. Now, she often wondered, what if I leave too? Who will he come home to? It was this fear, quiet but deep, that made her start watching people closely. Over the years, She had begun moving quietly through parts of the city, sometimes dressed as a simple beggar, as an old market woman, just to see the way people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. If a woman can't show kindness to a stranger, she would tell herself, she isn't right for my son. That day at the market, when Bianca's car had splashed her with dirty water and she was insulted like trash, Madame Gladys had felt the sting, not just of mud, but of disrespect. But then came Emily. That girl hadn't hesitated. She didn't know who she was. She didn't ask for anything. She simply helped with her hands, her heart, and her eyes. Madame Gladys had felt something stir inside her, a spark of hope. She leaned back now, the breeze tickling her arms. "Emily," she whispered, smiling. "If I had a daughter like that, no, a daughter-in-law like that, I would thank God every day." She didn't know yet that Bianca, the proud woman from the SUV, was the same woman her son was dating. But she knew one thing for sure. She wanted Derek to meet Emily. The challenge now was how. How would she bring them together without forcing it? How could she guide her son's heart gently in the direction of a girl who had already passed a test she didn't even know she was taking? Madame Gladys closed her eyes, thinking carefully. Somewhere out there, in a supermarket not far away, was a girl named Emily, and something inside her said, this was only the beginning. The next morning, while the large halls of the Okoye mansion glowed in silence, and Madame Gladys sat with tea in hand, quietly thinking about how to find Emily again. Just a few streets away, the buzz of morning business had begun. Inside a busy supermarket tucked beside the market road, Emily was already at work. She stood behind the counter in her green apron, sorting out receipts and checking the shelf list for the day. She was 27, beautiful in a simple way, no makeup, no flashy jewelry, just neatly tied hair, clean clothes, and a calm presence that somehow made people feel at ease. Her smile wasn't loud, but it was warm, and when she spoke, her voice carried a kind of peace that stuck with you. "Good morning, Auntie Bisi," she greeted an older customer, helping her lift a bag of rice onto the counter. "You're early today. You know me now," the woman laughed. "Before the sun comes out, I must finish shopping." Emily smiled again, scanned the items, and packed everything carefully. The supermarket, Green Basket Mart, was not the fanciest place, but it was well kept. Most of the customers from the neighborhood preferred it because of the friendly staff and honest prices. And most of them liked to come when Emily was on duty. She was smart, hardworking, and always respectful to customers, colleagues, even delivery boys. The shopkeeper, Mr. Oho, a round-faced man in his 50s, often watched her with quiet admiration. "That girl has sense," he once told another staff member. "She does her work well, never complains, and respects herself." Colleagues, too, always spoke highly of her. "If I had a daughter like Emily, I would sleep with 2 eyes closed," Mama Kemi, the cleaner, would often say. But what none of them knew, not even Mr. Oho knew, was that Emily's name was once whispered in the richest homes of the city. She was none other than Emily Johnson, the only child of one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city. She had grown up surrounded by gold gates, marble floors, and private tutors. But it never made her proud. Still, when she turned 24, everything changed. Suitors began to knock. Businessmen and politicians sent gifts to her father. People smiled too much at her but never looked her in the eyes. Everyone saw her name, her wealth, her future, but nobody saw her. "I want real love," she had once told her mother. "Not someone who wants to marry my bank account." Her mother had sighed. Her father had dismissed it. But Emily had made her choice. She left. She cut off her cards, packed a bag with simple clothes, and moved far from her old life into a quiet, everyday neighborhood where no one knew her face. There, she applied for work at a neighborhood supermarket, something her old friends would never imagine. And for the last 2 years, she had lived quietly, without guards, cars, or glam. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. Here, people greeted her as Emily the salesgirl. They smiled because of her kindness, not her last name. And in all the time she'd been there, no one ever asked about her past. She liked it that way. But now, things were beginning to shift. That older woman from the market, the one she had helped the day before, had touched her heart deeply. "She reminded me of my grandmother," Emily whispered to herself as she stocked tins of milk. Strong, but alone. She hadn't expected anything in return, but something about that woman stayed with her. Little did she know, that same woman, Madame Gladys, was already planning to find her again. And even more unexpected? Soon someone new would walk into the shop. Someone who had no idea who Emily really was. Meanwhile, inside, Madame Gladys sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. She was deep in thought, her mind still on the kind girl from the market, Emily. Footsteps echoed softly in the hallway. Derek walked in, dressed neatly in a dark shirt and brown trousers. He looked sharp, but his brows were slightly furrowed. "Mama," he said, standing in front of her. "Why did you go out in a taxi again?" Madame Gladys looked up slowly. "So even my driver reports me now?" she asked with a small smile. Derek sighed and sat beside her. "It's not safe. You have cars, a driver. Why would you take a taxi through that kind of place?" She placed her tea on the table and folded her hands gently. "Derek, there's something you need to understand. I don't go out to see danger. I go out to see people. I wear simple clothes, no jewelry, no name. And I watch how people behave when they think no one is watching." He looked confused. "For what, Mama? For you, my son?" He frowned. "Me? Yes," she said softly. "You have everything. Wealth, power, respect. But one thing is still missing. A woman who truly sees you, not your money, not your company, just you. I want someone who can walk beside you with humility and heart, not someone chasing your last name." Derek rubbed his forehead. "Mama, this again? I've told you already. I have someone. I'm not a boy anymore." She blinked. "Wow, really?" He nodded. "Yes, I'll introduce her to you soon. So please, no more matchmaking, no more tests." Madame Gladys held his gaze. "If she is the one, if your heart is truly at peace with her, then I have no problem, my son. I just want to be sure you're choosing with your soul, not your eyes." Derek stood, gently kissing her forehead. "Thank you, Mama. But trust me, I know what I'm doing." She smiled faintly, watching him walk out the door, briefcase in hand. But deep inside, her heart was not fully convinced. That evening, on his way home from a long day at the office, Derek asked his driver to stop at the market junction. "Just want to grab a cold bottle of water." He got out and walked into a nearby corner shop, Green Basket Mart. The bell above the door jingled softly as he entered. Behind the counter stood a young woman in a green apron, neatly dressed, her hair pulled back into a bun. She looked up and offered a gentle smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome." Derek nodded. "Just a bottle of water, please." She handed it to him and told him the price. As he paid, their fingers touched for a brief moment. She was polite, quiet, not overly chatty like some people were when they saw someone in a nice shirt or expensive shoes. Her voice was calm, her energy peaceful. Something about her felt different. "Thank you," he said, already turning to leave. But as he stepped outside, he heard the soft patter of shoes behind him. "Sir, your change." He turned. She held out a small folded note with both hands. "You forgot this," she said, a little shy, eyes avoiding his. He smiled and took it. "Thank you. Most people wouldn't bother." She shrugged. "It's not mine. You worked for it." He stared at her a second longer than usual. There was nothing flashy about her. No heavy makeup, no fake accent, just realness. "Have a good evening," she added, walking back inside. "You too," he replied softly. As he stepped back into the car, the driver asked, "Everything all right, sir?" Derek nodded slowly, eyes still on the shop window. "Yeah, just interesting girl." He didn't know her name. She didn't know who he was, and neither of them knew that this simple meeting was about to change everything. The following morning, the sun was soft, casting a gentle glow over the market street. It was a quiet day, the kind Madame Gladys liked best. The air was fresh, and the roads were drying up from the week's rain. She sat in the back seat of the car, dressed once again in her simple wrapper and plain blouse, her scarf tied neatly. Her driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Are you sure you don't want me to wait close by, Ma?" "No, just park somewhere nearby. I won't be long," she replied. Her eyes were focused ahead on a small green sign that read, "Green Basket Mart." As she stepped out and entered the shop, the little bell above the door rang gently. Behind the counter, Emily looked up, and her face immediately lit up. "Mama, you came!" she exclaimed, hurrying from behind the counter. Madame Gladys smiled warmly. "I told you I would, didn't I?" Emily brought out a plastic chair and guided her to sit, fussing like a granddaughter. "You didn't have to come all this way. If you needed anything, I could bring it to you." "I didn't come to buy anything," Madame Gladys said, chuckling. "I just wanted to see you. You remind me of someone dear." Emily's cheeks warmed with the compliment. She bent slightly and spoke gently. "Mama, I've been thinking. If I can save for a few more months, I can help you set up a little table or kiosk behind the supermarket. Something small, maybe for vegetables or eggs. You can sit there and still earn something without stress." Madame Gladys looked at her, deeply moved. "You want to do that for me?" "Yes. I may not have much, but it would make me happy." Madame Gladys shook her head slowly, tears nearly gathering in her eyes. "My daughter, you don't even know me, and you don't even have much. Yet you want to give?" Emily hesitated. Her heart beat faster. This was the moment. She almost said it, almost told the woman everything. About who she really was, that she wasn't just a salesgirl, that she could afford to build her not just a kiosk, but an entire store if she wanted to. But something held her back. Her voice came out low. I'll explain everything next time, I promise." Madame Gladys touched her hand gently. "You don't owe me anything, my dear. Your heart has already spoken louder than money." Just then, the little bell above the door rang again. Before either of them could look up fully, a tall figure bumped into Madame Gladys at the entrance. Bianca. Head held high, designer bag over one shoulder, and her usual sharp scent floating around her. She stumbled slightly, then stepped back, her face twisting with disgust.
"Oh, not you again,"
she snapped, fanning herself dramatically.
"You're still walking around smelling like gutter water?"
Madame Gladys stepped aside quietly, saying nothing. "I spent thousands on my outfit today," Bianca went on. "And now this old hag has ruined it with her poverty stench." Her voice was loud, rude, cruel, but she wasn't ready for what came next. Emily had heard everything. She rushed out from behind the counter, her eyes blazing. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "You don't speak to her like that." Bianca raised an eyebrow, then burst into laughter. "Oh, look, the salesgirl with an attitude. Of course, filth sticks together." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. "Being rich doesn't make you better, and insulting the elderly doesn't make you bold. It makes you empty." Bianca rolled her eyes and flipped her hair. "Spare me the sermon, Mother Teresa. You sell milk for a living, don't talk to me about class." She turned and stormed off, heels clacking, perfume trailing like smoke. The store fell silent again. Emily turned to Madame Gladys, her chest still rising and falling. "I'm so sorry, Mama. You didn't deserve that." The old woman smiled, eyes moist with emotion. "No need to apologize, my daughter. You defended me. Again. I just think young women like that still have a lot to learn about how the world works." Emily walked her to the door and watched as she disappeared down the road. And as Madame Gladys entered her waiting car, she clutched her chest softly. "If only he knew," she whispered. "If only my son knew who this girl really is." That evening, the Okoye mansion glowed softly under the warm light of crystal chandeliers. The dining table was being carefully set, silverware polished, napkins folded neatly, and wine glasses standing like quiet guards around the plates. Everything was being prepared for what Derek called a special dinner. In the living room, Madame Gladys sat on her usual chair, sipping tea quietly as Derek walked in, loosening his tie. "Mama," he said calmly, "I want to introduce you to someone." She raised her eyebrows, pretending not to expect it. "Who is she?" "Bianca," he replied. "My fiancé. I told you about her before. I want us to have a proper dinner together, the three of us." Madame Gladys nodded slowly. "All right then, let's meet her." A few hours later, at exactly 6:45 p.m., the black SUV pulled up in front of the mansion. Bianca stepped out, heels clicking smartly on the pavement. She wore a fitted red gown that shimmered with every step, a diamond necklace around her neck, and makeup done to perfection. Her bag was designer. Her nails sparkled. Her smile was sharp with excitement. "Tonight is the night," she whispered to herself, touching up her lipstick in the car's side mirror. "He's finally going to propose." She rang the bell and was led inside by a butler. "Sir Derek is waiting in the dining room, Ma," the butler said. She walked in confidently, expecting candlelight and maybe a velvet box on the table. But what she saw made her feet freeze. Sitting calmly at the end of the long dining table, dressed simply in a clean wrapper and soft blouse, was the last face she ever expected to see. The old beggar woman she had splashed mud on and insulted outside the market. Bianca's eyes widened. Her body stiffened. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Just then Derek entered the room, smiling. "Mama," he said, motioning with his hand. "Meet Bianca, my fiancée." Madame Gladys rose slowly, her eyes cold but calm. "Oh, we've met already," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "Twice, in fact." Bianca looked at Derek in horror. What is she talking about?" she stammered. Derek turned, confused. "Mama?" Madame Gladys stepped forward, eyes fixed on Bianca. "The first time we met, she was driving a black SUV. She ran through a puddle and splashed mud all over me. Instead of saying sorry, she yelled at me from her window, 'Poor people like you should stay out of the way.'" Bianca's face turned pale. "That's not—" she started, reaching for a defense, but Madame Gladys cut her off. "The second time, she bumped into me at a supermarket. Again, insults. She said I smelled like poverty, that I ruined her designer dress just by standing there." Derek's smile disappeared. He stared at Bianca, stunned. "Bianca, I didn't know she was your mother," Bianca blurted, forcing a weak laugh. "I thought she was it was a misunderstanding." Madame Gladys folded her arms slowly. "Exactly. You didn't know. That's the point." "But I'm sorry now," Bianca said quickly, blinking fast. "I mean it." Madame Gladys shook her head, her voice firm. "True kindness is shown when no one is watching. You had your chance twice." Silence filled the room. Derek stared at Bianca, the weight of disappointment sinking in. "I knew you were materialistic and harsh, but I never knew you were this shallow and wicked," he said quietly. "I should never have brought you here." Bianca's lips quivered. "Derek, please." He took a deep breath and stepped back. "I can't build a life with someone who has no respect for the people around me, or people in general, just because they are poor, and I certainly cannot marry someone who wears beauty on the outside but carries pride like poison." Bianca swallowed hard. Tears gathered in her lashes, but Derek was already turning away. "It's over," he said softly. "You can go." She stood frozen for a moment, her glittering image now shadowed by shame. Then slowly, she turned and walked toward the door, heels silent this time. Moments later, the grand front door of the Okoye mansion closed with a soft but final thud. Bianca was gone. The air inside the house shifted, lighter now, clearer. The scent of expensive perfume faded as silence returned. Derek remained standing in the hallway, his hands in his pockets, his heart heavy. He turned and walked slowly back into the sitting room, where Madame Gladys sat waiting. Her expression was calm, but there was a softness in her eyes, not pride, not "I told you so," just understanding. He lowered himself onto the couch beside her and let out a long sigh. "Mama, I'm sorry." She turned her head toward him, her face gentle. "For what, my son? For almost bringing the wrong person into this family. I didn't know she treated people like that." "I swear I didn't." Madame Gladys reached for his hand and gave it a soft squeeze. "You didn't do anything wrong by believing in someone, Derek. But I'm proud of you for letting go when the truth came out." Derek looked at her. "It still hurts, though." "Of course it does." She nodded. "But pain that teaches is never wasted." She sat up straighter, her voice quiet but firm. "Derek, respect should not be given to someone simply because they're rich, famous, or well-dressed. It should be earned by how they treat others, especially those who have nothing to offer them." He nodded slowly, reflecting on her words. Then she smiled. "But I didn't call you back here just to speak about her." He looked at her curiously. "Oh?" She chuckled softly. "I want to introduce you to someone." Derek's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she raised a hand before he could protest. "No matchmaking, I promise. Nothing serious. Just a young woman I met recently. She helped me when she didn't know who I was. She showed me kindness, even when I looked like I had nothing. That's not common these days." He smiled faintly, remembering the things his mother had always taught him growing up. "You really like her?" "I respect her," Madame Gladys said. "She has a good heart. And there's something peaceful about her presence, like fresh breeze after heavy rain. I thought maybe you could meet her, even just as friends." Derek leaned back on the sofa, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "Mama, you know I don't want you picking girls for me." She laughed. "I'm not picking. I'm only suggesting you open your eyes where it matters." He laughed softly too, then nodded. "All right. I'll make time. Maybe next weekend. That's fine. She smiled. I'll let her know. He stood and bent to kiss her forehead. Thanks for always looking out for me, Mama. Even when I don't deserve it. She touched his cheek. You always deserve love, Derek. Just make sure whoever gives it understands what it means. As he walked off toward his study, neither of them knew he had already met the girl she was talking about. The same girl who gave him back his forgotten change, the one with quiet eyes and steady hands. The next afternoon, the bell above the door at Greenbasket Mart jingled softly. Emily, restocking canned goods behind the counter, looked up and blinked in surprise but not displeasure. Derek stepped in, dressed simply in a plain white shirt and jeans. There was no driver, no wristwatch gleaming with diamonds. Just him. Tired eyes. A gentle smile. Back again? She asked warmly. Apparently, I'm very bad at remembering to buy water in bulk, he replied with a soft chuckle. She smiled and handed him a cold bottle before he even asked. Something about Emily's presence had a way of calming him, like walking into a place where the world stopped spinning so fast. Her kindness wasn't loud, but it was steady. And over the past week, Derek found himself returning again and again, just to see her. He never told her who he was, only that he was Derek. Simply Derek. He didn't tell her his last name or his wealth, and she never asked. And Emily? She didn't reveal anything either. She didn't speak of the family estates or her father's business empire. She didn't explain why a girl with the poise of a diplomat and the grace of a queen was selling rice and sardines in a small neighborhood mart. They simply talked. At first it was small things, the weather, funny customers, the best bread in the area, then slowly more. One evening, after her shift ended, Derek waited outside, leaning casually by the entrance. You walk home? He asked. Most days, she said. Helps me think. Can I walk with you? She hesitated a moment, then nodded, and that walk turned into many walks. They spoke about life, how noisy the world could be, how real peace felt rare, how not all that glitters is gold. Derek found himself opening up in ways he hadn't with anyone. Not even Bianca, not his colleagues, not even fully with his mother. Sometimes, he confessed one night, you meet someone who checks all the boxes: beauty, ambition, reputation. But their heart, it's empty. Cold. Emily looked at him, listening, never judging. And other times, he continued, you meet someone who makes you feel calm just by being near them. You feel like you've come home. Her cheeks flushed gently at his words, but she kept walking. He noticed the way she didn't brag or try to impress him. Yet somehow everything about her was impressive. The way she listened, the way she spoke, the way her quietness had more weight than any loud room he'd ever been in. And though Derek didn't say it out loud yet, he was beginning to know. He was falling for her. But still, a part of him hesitated. What if I'm wrong again? What if I'm just caught in the feeling like I was with Bianca? But something deeper, quieter, whispered back, no, this is different. She's different. Her class was the kind that didn't need to shout. Her beauty wasn't just on the outside, it lived in her choices. Meanwhile, Emily was facing her own storm. That night, after returning to her small apartment, her phone rang. It was her mother's number, the familiar ringtone bringing back 1,000 memories. Emily, her mother's voice said gently, you promised. 2 years. It's time. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her heart suddenly tight. I know, Mama, she said softly. I need a little more time. Your father is planning a welcome dinner, her mother said, and people are beginning to ask questions. You're not a child anymore. You need to settle down. There are good men here, real men. We want to see you happy. Emily's throat tightened. She looked out the window, the same road she and Derek had walked just hours ago. I'll come soon, she whispered. I promise. After the call ended, she sat in silence. She had always planned to return home after 2 years. That was the agreement. But now there was Derek, the friend who asked nothing of her, who never looked at her wallet or her background, who spoke with honesty and listened with his eyes, who made her laugh when she was tired and think deeply when she was restless. She stared at the ceiling. The following morning, a gentle breeze rustled through the market street as Emily stepped out during her short break. She was restocking the tea shelf when she noticed a familiar figure at the door, dressed simply as always, with a calm grace and kind eyes. "Madam Gladys." "Mama," Emily said, pleasantly surprised, wiping her hands on her apron. "You came again?" "Yes, my daughter," Madam Gladys smiled. "I wanted to see you and ask for a little favor." Emily stepped aside to let her in. "Anything, Mama." Madam Gladys paused, then reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, neatly folded piece of paper. It was a handwritten note with an address and time. "I'd like you to visit me," she said softly. "At my home. Nothing serious. I just want you to meet someone." Emily blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Of course. I'll come on my day off." "Thank you," Madam Gladys said, squeezing her hand gently. "I look forward to it." A few days later, the cab pulled up to a long, beautiful driveway lined with flowering trees and trimmed hedges. Emily's eyes widened as she stepped out. In her mind, she'd expected a small flat or maybe a bungalow on a quiet street. But this was a mansion, elegant, quiet, grand, much like her own family house. She looked at the paper in her hand again, then at the tall black gates and the security post. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself. Still, she walked forward. The guard checked the name on the paper and nodded respectfully. "You're expected," he said, waving her in. Her heart beat faster as she stepped through the gate. The compound was breathtaking. She adjusted her dress, suddenly feeling nervous. Then the front door opened, and there he was. Derek. Wearing a simple grey shirt and black trousers, standing tall with a mix of surprise and something else in his eyes, a spark. Emily stood frozen. "You?" He stepped forward, a stunned smile forming slowly. "You're the one Mama invited?" She nodded slowly, still stunned. "You live here?" He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yes. This is my home." She blinked, then laughed softly. "And here I was thinking you were just a really humble guy who liked bottled water a lot." "I do," he grinned. "But now you know I'm also the guy who forgets change just to keep coming back." She blushed lightly. "Come in," he said gently. As she entered the grand house, Madam Gladys came down the stairs, already beaming. "Ah, you've met him," she said, pretending not to notice the surprise still on Emily's face. "Yes, Mama," Emily smiled. "Turns out, we already knew each other." Dinner was light, warm, and filled with laughter. But all through the meal, Madam Gladys noticed something. The way Derek stole glances at Emily. The way he leaned slightly closer when she spoke. The way his smile softened every time their eyes met. After dessert, Madam Gladys stood and gave them space. Later, she invited Emily for a quiet chat in the garden. They sat under a shaded tree, and Madam Gladys turned to her gently. "My daughter, I am glad you came, and even more glad you've met my son." Emily sighed, folding her hands nervously in her lap. "Yes, Mama, I am happy I came around too. Seeing all this, knowing who you really are, I think it's time you knew who I really am too." She took a deep breath. "My name is Emily Johnson. I'm the daughter of Chief Williams Johnson. My father runs one of the biggest firms in the country, and my mother is an ambassador." Madam Gladys blinked but didn't speak yet. "I left home almost 2 years ago. I was tired of being told who to marry, tired of people pretending to like me for who I wasn't. I wanted something real, peace, purpose. So I came here, left my identity behind, and took a simple job to live like a regular person." Madam Gladys looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled warmly. "So I see. I wasn't the only one with a secret." Emily laughed softly, the tension easing. "Seems we both had reasons to hide, Mama." Madam Gladys touched her hand. "But the truth always finds its way out, and so does love." They sat in silence for a while, a shared understanding settling between them, not just as women, but as mothers, daughters, seekers of truth, and keepers of powerful secrets. That night the moon hung quietly over the Okoye mansion, silver light pouring through Derek's window as he sat in his study, lost in thought. "Emily." He whispered her name under his breath like a secret prayer. It's been 3 days since the quiet dinner at the mansion. 3 days since the day he discovered she was the same kind-hearted girl who had always stood up for his mother, but he still couldn't get her off his mind. How did I meet her? Not once, but twice. First as the girl who handed him his forgotten change, then as the woman who had comforted his mother without knowing who she was. There was no pretending anymore. Derek was in love. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was lovely. It wasn't even her kindness, though it pulled him in like gravity. It was her essence. Quiet, grounded, deep. I have to tell her, he thought. She has to know how I feel. At that same moment, across town, Emily sat in her small apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror. He's not just a kind stranger. He's Derek Okoye, the billionaire, the son of Madame Gladys, a woman she respected deeply, and yet he hadn't treated her differently. He'd never once acted entitled or arrogant, and that made her heart ache more. He deserves the truth, she whispered to herself. He has to know who I really am before this goes any further. But neither of them knew. A storm was already brewing. Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment across the city, Bianca paced angrily in heels she no longer felt strong in. Her flawless nails were chipping. Her influencer posts were getting fewer likes. And Derek? He wasn't answering her calls. She had been calling, texting, even showing up at places they used to visit. Finally, after days of silence, her phone rang. Derek. She answered before the first ring could even finish. Derek, thank God, I've been trying to... Bianca, he said calmly but firmly. This has to stop. Please, just let me explain. I'm not angry anymore, but we're over. Really over. It's done. Click. The call ended. She froze. Her chest rose and fell quickly, rage and panic rushing through her veins. How dare he? How dare he throw me away like that? For what? Just because I spoke harshly to an old woman? Is it my fault she decided to look poor? Why couldn't she just show up classy and rich? Later that day, while scrolling through an influencer's post about socialites in the city, Bianca saw it. A blurry picture of Derek and a girl walking side by side outside a cafe. Her heart dropped. That girl. She zoomed in. The same face from the supermarket. The one who had defended that old beggar woman. No, she wasn't a beggar. She turned out to be Derek's mom. Her again? She hissed aloud. What is she doing with my Derek? Is he with her because she defended his mother? Her mind started to spiral. The fame was fading. Brands had started moving on to younger, fresher faces. But if she could become Mrs. Okoye, she'd be set for life. Power, money, status. No, she whispered, pacing again. I won't let that low-class nobody steal my future. Her mind twisted into dark resolve. She has to go. She began pacing faster, eyes wild, heart burning. If that girl disappears, Derek will come back. His mother will have no choice either. She picked up her phone and made a call. A shady voice on the other end answered. I need something done. Quietly, back in the Okoye mansion, Madame Gladys was watching the night sky when Derek came outside. Mama, he said. Yes, my son? I've made up my mind. She turned to him. About what? Emily. I want to tell her how I feel, and I want to know how she feels about me. Madame Gladys smiled gently. I think you should too. I don't want you to lose someone like that. Such a jewel is hard to find. Derek smiled faintly, hopeful, but unaware of the shadow that was silently creeping toward the woman he was falling in love with. The morning sun rose gently over the city, spreading golden light across rooftops and rustling trees. Inside the Okoye mansion, Derek stood by his bedroom window, phone in hand, heart quietly racing. Today was the day. He had made up his mind the night before, after the talk with his mother, after all the signs, after the way his soul felt lighter around Emily. She has to know how I feel, and I need to know how she feels too. He tapped his phone screen and typed, Hey Emily, I was wondering, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Just the two of us. Nothing fancy, just us. I'd really love to see you. Not even 2 minutes later, her reply came in. I'd like that. I was hoping to talk to you too. Derek smiled to himself, a calm peace washing over him. But peace can be a fragile thing. And that morning, while Emily laid out her simple dress for the evening and packed away her apron from the supermarket, a car had parked quietly across the street from her apartment. Inside sat a man in a black cap, pretending to scroll his phone. But his eyes never left the door, and not far from him, behind dark sunglasses and a scarf wrapped tightly around her face, sat Bianca, watching too. She thinks she's won, Bianca whispered bitterly. Let's see if she can win from the ashes. A few hours later, at the Johnson family mansion, Emily's parents were having tea in the garden when their trusted bodyguard Christopher burst in, breathing hard. Sir, madam, what is it? Chief Johnson asked, already standing. Emily, something's happened. I was watching as usual from across the road. She didn't return home after her shift. Some men grabbed her near the corner of the street. I tried to follow, but I lost them.
What?
Her mother screamed, standing so quickly the chair fell over. I called the station immediately, but there's no news yet. No ransom, no calls, no demands, nothing. Her father's face turned pale. Put out a reward. Immediately. 500 million for her safe return, no questions asked. Yes, sir. But deep inside they were terrified. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. Emily was their only child, and someone had taken her without a trace. Back at his office, Derek stared at his phone, puzzled. Emily hadn't replied to his follow-up message about the dinner location. Strange, he thought. She always replies quickly. He tried calling. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. A nervous chill crept into his chest. Maybe her phone's dead, or she's busy, but the uneasy feeling only grew stronger. Then his phone buzzed suddenly. It was a forwarded article link from his personal assistant. He clicked on it lazily while sipping his coffee, and froze. He clicked on it casually, and then froze. Breaking. Chief Williams offers 500 million for safe return of missing daughter, Emily Johnson. Below the headline was a photo of the girl who had been haunting his thoughts for weeks. Emily. His Emily. The caption read, Chief Williams, one of Nigeria's wealthiest businessmen, is offering a reward for any information leading to the safe return of his only daughter, Emily Johnson, who went missing earlier today from her apartment. Derek nearly dropped his phone. Emily. Johnson. His thoughts spun wildly. She never told me. She's Chief Williams' daughter. She is a billionaire herself, even richer than he is. And yet, she had worked in a supermarket, walked home, laughed with him under streetlights. She never used her name, never played the rich card, never even hinted. His heart swelled with both awe and panic. She's missing, and he must find her now, no matter what it took. Just as he turned to grab his keys and run out the office door, racing towards the parking lot in panic, a voice called behind him. Sir Derek! Sir! He turned. An elderly man, one of the old traders who sold fruit across the street, was waving and rushing toward him. You know that fair girl you always come to see at the supermarket? The man panted. Yes, Emily? Derek asked quickly. Yes, I saw her earlier today, but something not good happened. What do you mean? Some men pushed her into a black car by the corner road near her house. I see it with my 2 eyes. They took her to that old warehouse near the railway line. You know the place that always looks abandoned? Derek's chest tightened. Yes, I know it. Go on. They carried kerosene or fuel inside. I think they want to burn the place. Burn her inside. Derek's eyes widened in horror. What? Did you call the reward line? No, the man interrupted, shaking his head. She helped me once when my wife was sick. She bought all my fruits without asking price, and even gave me extra to feed the kids. She took me to the chemist. I don't need money. I just want to see her safe. Go now, before it's too late. Derek didn't wait another second. Thank you. Thank you so much. He jumped into his car and sped off like his life depended on it. Because someone else's life did. The roads blurred. His heart pounded. His hands shook as he called the police, shouting out the warehouse location. But even if they came late, he wasn't waiting. Inside the warehouse, Emily lay tied to a chair, her mouth gagged, heart racing in fear. Darkness surrounded her, and in the shadows, she heard the clink of a bottle, then a voice she would never forget. Goodbye, little supermarket girl. Bianca. She lit a match and smiled. Smoke curled into the dusky sky as Derek's car screeched to a halt just outside the crumbling warehouse near the railway line. The scent of burning fuel hit him immediately, sharp, toxic, terrifying. Emily! He shouted, sprinting through the rusty doors. Inside, flames licked the wooden crates stacked against the far walls. The heat was rising fast. Then, through the smoke, he saw her. Tied to a chair, eyes wide with fear, the fire only meters away. Emily! He yelled again. Her muffled cry was weak, but it was enough. Without a second thought, Derek lunged forward. A beam cracked overhead. Sparks fell dangerously close, but he didn't stop. His hands worked quickly, pulling at the ropes, freeing her arms, then her legs. She was coughing hard, her eyes filled with tears, not just from the smoke, but the sight of him. You came? She whispered hoarsely. I'll always come, he said, lifting her gently into his arms. They barely made it out before the fire surged higher behind them. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, the police and fire services finally arriving. Derek placed Emily down safely on the grass just beyond the building. His arms trembled, not from exhaustion, but from everything that had just happened. He looked at her. Her face ash-streaked, her hair a mess, but still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I thought I lost you," he said softly. "You almost did," she whispered, her voice shaking. They sat there for a moment side by side in the cooling night, and then the silence broke. "Derek, my name is Emily Johnson. I'm not a supermarket girl. I'm the daughter of Chief Williams." He smiled, gently brushing soot off her cheek. "I know. I found out today, from the news. I wanted to tell you," she said, "but I was scared. I've lived so long hiding who I am, afraid people would only see the wealth, not the person." "Emily," Derek interrupted, voice steady. "I saw the person from the very beginning. The girl who wiped mud off a stranger's face. The one who listened when I talked. The one who smiled at the world even when it wasn't kind to her." She blinked, stunned by his sincerity. "And I'm not just an ordinary man either," he added quietly. "I'm Derek Okoye, your man." They both laughed softly, the irony almost magical. No more masks, no more guessing, no more hiding. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now," Derek said, taking her hand, "we go home." Later that week, Emily stood at the entrance of her family's estate, holding Derek's hand tightly. Her parents, Chief and Mrs. Williams, came out to receive them, already informed by the bodyguards and relieved beyond words to have their daughter home. When they saw Derek, the man who had saved her life, they were moved. "You have our gratitude," her father said, shaking Derek's hand firmly. "But more than that, our respect." Her mother embraced Emily tightly, whispering, "I see it in your eyes. This is the one." Emily smiled. "Yes, Mom, this is the one." Later that day, a public statement was released, not just announcing Emily's safe return, but introducing Derek and Emily's relationship to the world. Photos of them together surfaced, Derek with his arm around her, Emily glowing beside him. The sun rose brightly over the city as social media buzzed with a headline that sent waves through every corner of the internet. Billionaire heiress Emily Johnson engaged to Derek Okoye, from humble beginnings to true love. In a quiet supermarket tucked near the market, Emily's former co-workers huddled around a small TV screen behind the counter. Mouths dropped open, eyes widened. "Wait, our Emily? That same girl who used to sweep the floor every morning? She's a billionaire heiress?" The shopkeeper, Mr. Tunde, shook his head with a grin. "She came here every day, wore the same neat clothes, smiled at everyone, never showed pride, and she was that rich all along. We thought she was just one of us," one of the younger girls said. "That's exactly who she was," Mr. Tunde replied. "Rich or not, her heart was gold." Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment far across the city, Bianca sat in silence. Her phone buzzed again and again with updates. She didn't want to see pictures of Derek and Emily laughing, hugging, glowing in the spotlight. Comments flooded in. "Power couple goals. She's so graceful and real, I love her. This is the kind of love money can't buy." Bianca's hands trembled as she shut the phone off. "How do you fight a billionaire heiress who's also kind, humble, and now loved by the whole country? You don't. You lose." Just then a knock. 3 firm knocks on her door. She opened it only to be met by 2 police officers. "Miss Bianca Agu," one said, showing a warrant. "You're under arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." "What? No, wait, this is a mistake. We have evidence," the officer interrupted. "Voice recordings, messages, and witness testimony. Courtesy of Mr. Derek Okoye's private investigation team." Bianca's legs gave way as she was handcuffed and led away, her empire of selfies, sponsors, and spotlight crumbling behind her. Weeks later, under the golden canopy of a luxurious but peaceful garden, Derek stood at the altar, waiting. He smiled as he watched Emily walk toward him, in a simple but elegant white gown, her presence radiant, her smile soft but strong. After the vows were exchanged and the kiss sealed their love, the reception lit up with joy and laughter. Madame Gladys stood to give a toast, her voice rich with emotion. "Love is not built on titles or class," she said, raising her glass. "It's built on kindness, on respect, and truth." Emily's parents smiled proudly, holding hands as they watched their daughter finally find peace and love. Later, the market bustled with activity, just like always. Emily, now dressed in a modest blouse and sandals, walked through the familiar street with a soft smile on her face. At one corner, a woman dropped her basket, scattering tomatoes across the ground. Before anyone could move, Emily bent down, picking them up gently. "Let me help you," she said kindly. The woman looked up, stunned. You're the woman from the TV. The one who just married that rich man." Emily only smiled. "Yes, but today I'm just Emily." The woman smiled too, and together they packed the tomatoes back in the basket. Kindness is the only luxury that never fades. Respect should never be reserved for the rich. It defines who we are when no one's watching. Be kind even when no one is watching. Don't let money make you proud. Real love comes when you stop pretending. Life will always test your heart. What it reveals is who you truly are. Thank you for following this journey of humility, heart, and healing.